Erich von Däniken, welcome to the program.
Well, I'm happy to be with you from Switzerland.
Erich von Däniken's works have been translated into 28 languages and have sold more than 63 million copies. He published his first and best-known book, Chariots of the Gods, in 1968. The worldwide bestseller was followed by 32 more books, including the recent bestsellers History is Wrong, Evidence of the Gods, and his latest, Remnants of the Gods. His ideas were the inspiration for history's hit TV series Ancient Aliens, with Erich von Däniken appearing in the pilot episode. Erich, you've been active in this field of study for over 45 years. You've been incredibly successful. Why continue? Why keep writing?
You see, I feel myself as a kind of missionary, all through with no religious aspects. Missionary means I think I have found out something which is important for all of us, and I try to give my knowledge to mankind, to our brothers and sisters. That's all. But again, I have no religious aspects in my knowledge at all. I don't want to found a new sect or something like this.
It's my understanding that you believe that the DNA of the human species was altered by ETs.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of concern today about GMO foods, but you're saying we're in fact GMO people.
Well, you see, I have the knowledge of antique books. Now, everyone in our society who is educated as a Christian knows the Bible. And in the Bible, at the beginning, the Moses 1:6, they say, when the sons of the gods saw that the daughters of the humans were beauty, they took them to wife. That's one statement. So you ask, which sons of the gods? There are no sons of the gods. Some of them call it fallen angels. Now, I know the book of Enoch. Enoch was a prophet before the great flood. And Enoch was in contact with extraterrestrials. Of course, he does not call them extraterrestrial. He guardians of the sky or guardians of the heaven. And Enoch reports that 200 of these guardians of the sky have descended to earth, and here they saw beautiful girls. And the 200s wanted to have sex with these beautiful girls, and they did it. That means extraterrestrial had a sexual contact with some of our forefathers. Now we have a lot of questions, because normally we say extraterrestrials would look completely different to us. It would never work. For example, the sexual apparatus is never the same between extraterrestrials and us. But this is possible, soon as you accept the theory of panspermia. Panspermia means we are the offspring of another solar system. As the Bible says, God or the gods created humans according to their image. So, on the one hand, we are definitely the product of evolution. I am proud to be the product of evolution, but not only evolution. In sometimes, thousands of years ago, we had some sexual intercourse with somebody else, and evolution changed.
How many times in the past did ETs make contact with human civilization? Just once?
No,
twice?
No one knows for sure. According to my knowledge, I think we have been visited at least 3 times in the past. Between one visit and the next one, generally was about 3,000 to 4,000 years. But nobody knows where they came from. But we know from the old literatures and from the description, they looked humanoid. They were not completely different to us. They had a head, they had shoulders, they had arms, they had fingers, they had legs. So they were similar to us. But no one knows where they came from. No one knows exactly how many times they were here.
That puts us right in the cycle of Nibiru.
More or less, yes. And according to this cycle, they should show up again in our time. Because at least 4,000 years have passed again since the last visit.
So do you think they're still doing it, or the intention is for them to return?
Yes. I even think that they have already returned. But this is a complicated section to talk about. You know, as soon as we deal with UFOs is complicated, and there are so much rubbish and knowledge and unknowledge in the UFO field. but some of the modern cases seems to indicate that we are under observation again. Probably somebody is studying us, studying our languages, studying our weapon system, studying our bacteria, our virus. Are we in danger? Could we be dangerous for them? So it seems that we are under observation again.
Yeah, there is a lot of disinformation out there, a lot of absolute fantasy based on no evidence whatsoever.
Yes, that's true.
What's some of the worst stuff you've heard out there?
Well, in the newest case, we have the so-called Phoenix Lights. Phoenix Lights was in Arizona, Phoenix, where the last governor, Mr. Five Symington was his name. He saw, together with hundreds of other people, a gigantic object. That was in 1997. He saw a gigantic object, and as long as he was governor, he did not say the truth. Now, in the meantime, you can go into Google, and you just type in Phoenix Lights, and then you see Mr. Five Symington, who says the truth, that he did not tell the truth some 10 years ago. In the meantime, he knows the truth. He tells the truth. And we have many of these cases which were published in the last 5 years.
Erich, you've written a lot of books.
Yes.
You've made a lot of claims.
Yes.
Have you ever been wrong?
Of course. That is normal. You know, when you are young, you are enthusiastic. And when you are young, you believe every nonsense, sometimes every rubbish. And you are not scientifically in your thinking. So, for example, in my first book, Chariots of the Gods, before I published my first book, I was, of course, long time in Egypt, as a 19-year-old boy at that time. When I was in Egypt, some Egyptologists told me that there is a little island up in Aswan, near Aswan. And this little island has the name of Elephantine, because the island seen from the air has the shape of an elephant. So I published this in Chariots of the Gods. I said, this island looks like an elephant because from the air it looks like. Later I learned this is all garbage. It does not look as elephant at all. The name Elephantine comes because some real elephants were on the islands. So there are many little things which you were wrong and which you simply confess, I was misinterpreted and I was giving wrong information. But this same thing or the same problem you have in science. I mean, you take a scientific book which was written by a honest and integral personality, and the book is maybe 25 years old, so you have there and so an error. This is normal, this is human.
Have you ever done it intentionally?
No, definitely never, never at all.
In Star Trek, they have the Prime Directive.
Yes.
The non-interference of alien cultures. Ironically, according to your research, our progenitors all the way interfered.
Yeah.
Yet we hold the concept of non-interference as the ultimate space morality.
Yeah. But in antiquity, it was always only little groups who were influenced by the extraterrestrials. You take, for example, a figure like the biblical prophet Ezekiel. Ezekiel describes what he saw. He describes his experience. He describes a chariot coming out from the sky. He describes the wheels and the wings and the metallic legs, etc. He even describes the noise which the vehicle made. But he was only contacted by a small group. This extraterrestrial vehicle was not seen over Jerusalem, by the way, with 10,000 of people. They were only in contact with a small group of maybe 20 people. That was always like this in the past. The influence never took place before a gigantic crowd.
Does that not reduce its credibility?
In a way, yes, but in the other way, no. You have to know the religious writings from all over the world, and then you see that we have many similarities. For example, in the Bible, as I said, we have some flying chariots. But when you know the old Indian text, and I'm familiar with it, you find some flying chariots there too, often with similar connections, with similar descriptions of wings, of wheels, of metallic legs, etc. So it happened, obviously, and different cultures, different so-called prophets have handed it down in different ways.
If these ETs are going from one planet to the next, altering DNA, affecting the natural progression of cultures, is that not cause for concern? I mean, should we not question their motives? We assume they're benevolent.
At least in the past, they were not bad. They were more or less nice. They were the teachers of humans. They teach us in writing, in speaking, in kind of science, in metallurgy, etc. This is handed down. We have some cases in which they were bad. For example, when we read the story in the Bible of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, there the Lord of the Bible destroyed the two cities, Sodom and Gomorrah, because the people were bad. They were manmolet, we say. The same thing we have in old India. There 3 cities were destroyed with fire from heaven. So we have to ask, what at the hell did they want? In some cases they were helpful. They taught our forefathers. In other cases they were bad. They destroyed our forefathers. I don't have an answer.
Do you think there are alien clones influencing current world governments?
I don't know.
Not necessarily clones, but representatives of these extraterrestrials.
I rather think no. But who knows, finally? I mean, with their technology, they could observe us. They have a knowledge which is probably 200-300 years far away from us in the future. And they would not need clones or something to influence, I don't know, some political personalities. I don't see this in reality. But I would never exclude nothing.
Well, that's scientific. Just to be clear, the Nazca Lines, the ancient pyramid, the Sphinx, etc., were not built by extraterrestrials.
Definitely
by
not.
Humans, correct?
Nazca was never a so-called spaceport. I'm always misquoted worldwide. As soon as you see pictures of Nazca in some television shows, they say an Erich von Däniken claimed it was a spaceport. That's all garbage. Nazca was never a spaceport, and the line of Nazca were made by the humans. The question is, why? The same thing happened with the Great Pyramid. Of course, not extraterrestrials constructed the Great Pyramid. It was all the humans, our forefathers, who did it. The question again is, why, with what technological knowledge, and where does the engineering knowledge come from? Because it's quite complicated to construct a pyramid with so many passageways, corridors, rooms inside. So that's complicated. So the question is always behind...
So you're suggesting that they were co-engineered, built by man?
Again, I have to come back to Enoch. Enoch was an observer of these extraterrestrials. He was a 12-year-old boy when he was taken up to their mother's spaceship. Enoch learns the language. They dictate him book. They dictate him sciences. Before Enoch leaves our planet, he gives all the books to his son with the name of Methuselah. And he says clearly to his son Methuselah, keep these books for the generations after the Great Flood. In the meantime, until today, we have never found Enoch's book. All what we have is one simple book of Enoch, which comes from Ethiopia. But we never have found the 300 books which he gave to his son Methuselah. So where are they? Is the knowledge inside? So I suggest the extraterrestrials were the engineers. They have given to Enoch the knowledge of the construction of such a gigantic building, because maybe to put the books of Enoch inside the building. But the humans made the building. Just the planning comes from outside. You see, normally our humans have done gigantic things. When I think not only of the Great Pyramids, there are temples like Borobudur. There are incredible things which our forefathers did. The question is always, why? The answer is for the gods. Which gods? And there it starts. Gods are not just spiritual beings. Gods, so-called gods, were there. They have given knowledge. They have spoken to the humans. If we say gods were simply the nature, the lightning, the earthquake, the thundering, but the lightning and the thundering does not speak, does not give information. Somebody gave information at least according to the old texts. So who were these gods?
What do you think the purpose of the Great Pyramid is? We've all heard it's a tomb, but that clearly can't be the case.
Now, today I think, the newest measurements made in the Great Pyramid and I'm talking of measurements which are just about 2 years old, show that inside the Great Pyramid we have at least 1 kilometer of shafts, corridors, and holes. Some 15 years ago, from the so-called Queen's Chamber, a small robot entered into a shaft inside the Great Pyramid. And the robot went inside for 62 meters and came to a standstill before a little door. Later, National Geographic Society from the United States have constructed a second robot. And with the second robot, they made a hole into this little door. And they found nothing behind the door. But all through, they remarked that 23 centimeters before this little door was another door again. Now, in our times, just 1.5 years ago, a new robot was put there, and they made a digging. They were digging a small, very small hole to the next door. And inside is a room, definitely a room. You see it clearly with shaped, polished stones, and you see a writing on the room with red some sort of letters or whatever it is. But it is not hieroglyphic, which means it is not Cheops time. At Cheops time, they would have written hieroglyphic. So we know there are rooms and passageways inside the pyramid. But these passageways are so small that nobody can climb in there, because it's just 14 centimeters on the side length of one. So you cannot go in. You need high technology to go in there. But because of high technology, we were able to go with the robot in there. Without high tech, we had no chance. In the meantime, we find things in there. And I'm still hoping that probably we find the books of Enoch, which he gave to his son Methuselah before he left our planet.
These are from the years of Zawi Hawass, though. I mean, he'd been caught creating duplicate rooms that were empty so that the rooms that were filled with antiquities were not seen to the general public.
That's true, yes. But there's not only, you see, Zawi Hawass could only enter in these rooms which are possible for us humans to enter. But soon as we localize by electronic waves, some rooms we know definitely they are there, but the passageway is too small. So Zawi Hawass could not even go in these rooms. They are still there, untouched.
You know, Erich, I've heard some horrific stories about the conditions at the Giza Plateau post-Mubarak. Is the quality of information coming out of Giza, and in general, is it improving or getting worse?
Well, my God, this plateau of Giza is now since many thousands of years a place of ruins. And of course, we have the dust, we have the pollution, which makes some destruction outside. This is normal since thousands of years. But inside the pyramid, there is nothing destroyed. Everything, even Cheops' father, his name was Snefereu, in German Snorfu, I don't know, in English, Snefereu. Cheops' father constructed the pyramid, a pyramid in Dashur. And when you look from outside, this pyramid of Dashur looks like a catastrophe, just rubbish. But soon as you go inside, everything is perfect, polished, smooth granite, gigantic. So nothing inside the buildings are destroyed, just outside.
Do you foresee a first contact, another one, or a disclosure scenario in the near future? And if so, could man handle that reality psychologically?
That's why we should prepare for such a possibility. We should do something. I mean, with my books, I try to give a new opportunity, a new way of thinking. And I never say, it's the truth. What I want is, question, open, learn to question again, learn to think differently. So slowly, and I'm not the only one. My God, worldwide we have about 100 authors who work with the same subject than Erich von Däniken. The question is always, have you been visited from outer space? And as you mentioned in the beginning, in America, in the United States, you have this History Channel. History Channel has produced in the meantime a series of 90 continuations. So 90 continuations. It's called Ancient Aliens. So all of these things, the books of the authors, the scientific, the the television series, etc. All this is preparing mankind for a possibility. Look at it this way, so you don't have to be shocked if something happens. And what the final truth is, no one knows. First we have to get in contact with them, or we have at least to find the real books, which are somewhere in some building, I hope at least.
Perhaps the Vatican or some Knights Templars stash.
Of course, the Vatican Library has an incredible treasure of incredible books which they have taken away from Ethiopia, from Egypt, etc. a long time ago. But all these books are in these old languages. So if you read books in cuneiform, you have to be a Sumerologian to read it. And on this planet we have maybe 20 Sumerologians, or books which are written in, I don't know, in hieroglyphics. So you have to be Egyptologists to read them. And the problem is always every scientist, and this is normal, I pray that this is the way it stays, every scientist wants to be serious and wants not to be ridiculed. So we make these translations with a psychological knowledge of our forefathers. For example, we read in old texts that there was something like an angel. So what is an angel? An angel was a messenger coming down from some heaven, from God, to the humans to bring message. Now a modern translation would ask, angel, change the word and write, instead of angel, write extraterrestrial. Or we had visitors, human visitors, who were up in the sky or up in heaven. Our forefather Abraham was one of them. He was taken up to heaven. They taught him and they brought him back to earth in good health. The same thing with Enoch and many others. So we say, God took them to heaven. A modern translation would say, don't write the word heaven, write the word, or use the word space. They were in space, spaceship. What is an archangel? Is it the leader of a group of extraterrestrials? So it's always a question of translating. And in our days, this still means to be not serious if you use modern words, modern translation. We want to be serious. We want to be accepted. Nobody wants to be ridiculed by the community. That's why we still translate these texts in the old-fashioned way. In the meantime, we have some scientists. We have one Sumerologian here in Germany who has made a translation of an old text with modern terms. And he says it's fantastic. It makes sense. The same case we have with the professor in India who translated all Indian texts. He said absolutely fantastic. So slowly, the situation changes and we come to new translations of the old texts.
Let me ask you, you mentioned Ancient Aliens. Would you call it an entertainment program first and foremost, or an educational program?
Yes, I would rather say entertainment. I mean, some part of this series I like, it's wonderful. Some others I find a little too far away, really too complicated, too speculative, etc. So I'm not standing behind all of this. I'm just standing behind that what I say.
And it's speculation upon speculation, which is the problem.
Of course, yes, that is the case. Yeah, that's the case. Yeah, it has some scientific stuff in there too, but more or less, I think it's wonderful that they do it, that they produce it, because it brings us new questions.
How firm are you in the hypothesis that inexplicable objects, UPARTs, originated from ancient cultures that had contact with aliens? Could these cultures not have created these by themselves? Are you being dismissive, if not perhaps disrespectful to our ancestors? Well, until today, we have not found one single extraterrestrial object. I have not one object which I could proudly present to the scientific community and say, hey, this object is not from our planet. And it has to be a technological object, not just a meteorite or something. We have found absolutely nothing until today. All our knowledge concerning these extraterrestrial visits came out of the old writings, but we have nothing in our hands. We just have some engravings. We have the chiselings. We have what they say about their gods. We have, for example, the promise that all the gods in antiquity promised to return in the far future. These things we have. But objects, you mean objects from our ancestors, our pyramids,
our temples, are all the wonderful buildings which we admire today. And all these buildings can be interpreted in different way. The question, as I mentioned before, is for what gods have our ancestors done these gigantic works? And there we come to some extraterrestrials, because the gods in nature do not speak.
Now, of course, you're quite familiar, as I'm sure both the audience and our callers will be, with the writings of Zecharia Sitchin.
Of course.
Sitchin released his book, The 12th Planet, in 1976, 8 years after Chariots of the Gods.
Yes.
Does a part of you feel that Sitchin was riding your coattails?
Well, I adored Sitchin. We know each other very, very well. He was three times in Switzerland, and we had long chats together. And he has come up with this idea of the 12th planet. And I told him in our discussions, I do not believe in the 12th planet. This is seen from an astronomical point of view. It makes not too much sense. Our astronomers would have known about this 12th planet, which orbits the sun in 3,600 years. That's quite a long, long time. So at one time it's very frozen out there, and then it's very hot, so it makes it complicated. On the other hand, Zecharia Sitchin has brought up a lot of wonderful translations and his own explanations from Sumerian cuneiforms, and I adored him for that.
Do you believe he was qualified to make the translations he did?
Well, that's another question that Sumerologians have to answer. I know of some Sumerologians who say, no, this is all nonsense. He's not qualified.
I'm not sure. I've heard of a Sumeriologist, whatever, that's agreed with him.
Yeah, some of them think he's writing nonsense. And I'm not a judge of this.
What are your thoughts on his legacy?
Well, he has come up with ideas of the same ideas that I had before. It's just he gives it the name. For example, the Anunnakis. He translates some of these extraterrestrials. He says that this was 100,000 years in the past. I don't believe this of 100,000 years in the past. He says that at some time our forefathers were the slaves of these extraterrestrials. This is possible. I would not exclude that.
Do you believe that mankind was made to mine gold or to collect resources for the ET?
Yeah, this is possible, really. It's not a question of believing or not. I think it's possible. We have similar stories in other around the world in other mythologies, by the way, including in the Bible. Even in the Bible, the so-called chosen people, the Israelites, in some cases, they have to give offerings of gold, silvers, and precious stones to the so-called gods in the Bible. So why would a real God need some gold and precise stones? But
why would a god need a human being to mine the gold for him?
That's what I don't know. Probably there were only a few of them. They had another spaceship in orbit, and as we do it today with smaller spaceships, some sort of space shuttles, they come to Earth. And on Earth there were maybe 20 or 30 of these extraterrestrials, and not more. So they don't have... maybe they helped with some technology to our primitive forefathers, but the dirty work our forefathers had to do.
Scotty Roberts, welcome to the program. I know you have a question for Erich von Däniken.
I do. Hello, Eric. It's nice to talk to you again.
Hi, I'm far away from you. I'm in Switzerland.
Yes, you are. Probably smoking a pipe looking at the Alps.
Yes, exactly. We have wonderful weather here.
Oh, fantastic. We have snow, so there you go. And spring is coming someday. Well, here's my question, and this is something you and I have talked about before. And I wanted to ask you about the faith question to this, only because the kinds of things that you put forward in your theories and your information are the things that tend to fly in the face of traditional religion. And there's always going to be that conflict either between science and religion or faith and theory and so on. How do you find that you reconcile any difference that might be there? How do you, and if you don't mind a little personal twist on this, how does your personal faith get affected by the things that you research?
Well, first of all, when I have an old text, a so-called holy text, I always make a difference. Is it handed down? Is it written in the first person, in the I form? For example, the prophet Ezekiel in the Bible writes in the I form, first person. So he is an eyewitness. So that's a difference. If somebody writes about things which he saw and heard with his own body, or if it's just reported from a third person. Soon as I have an eyewitness report, I take it rather from serious, because some thousands of years ago, our forefathers did not lie in the sense, I saw God. God was incredible, important. God was something incomprehensible, fantastic. So you do not lie in the first person and lie, God was here, I talked to God, etc. So I believe them. And my personal belief, all true, I have studied really so many of these mythologies and holy books of mankind. I never have lost my own God. Look, it's easy to explain. If Sitchin or I or others would be right, that would mean we were visited by extraterrestrials some thousands of years ago. So the next question has to be, where did they come from? What about their evolution? So you can go back in the sense of panspermia. You can say they were influenced by another solar system, and the others, etc., etc. Go back, it doesn't matter, for millions of years. Finally, you come to a starting point where in every respect, with every religion, you become very, very humble and modest, and you have to say, here is God, here is creation. I never lost my God. I am still one of these figures who pray every evening.
Scotty, tell me about the Paradigm Symposium. As I understand, Erich von Däniken is going to be a speaker there.
Yes, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again, Eric. This year, the Paradigm Symposium is in Minneapolis, and it's October 2nd through the 5th of this year. And we've got Erich von Däniken, we've got Brien Foerster, who's also on the line with you here. We've got Graham Hancock, we've got Andrew Collins, and several other people. You can just go check it out at ParadigmSymposium.com.
He is fantastic.
It's going to be
absolutely
phenomenal. To see you all on stage at one time is going to be amazing.
You've been there before, though, haven't you, Eric?
Yes, I was there, I guess, about last year, I think. And I was absolutely impressed. The organization was perfect. The audience was perfect. And it all had at least some scientific touch. It was not just rubbish and nonsense. They were all very honest, very clean in what they say and what they proved.
Oh, thank you for that.
We'll make sure that the audience gets that information so that they can get their tickets for the Paradigm Symposium. Thank you so much, Scotty Roberts.
Thank you, Eric. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Brien Foerster, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, and it's an absolute honor to be able to speak with Mr. von Däniken, and greetings from Cusco, Peru.
Oh, thank you.
I have been studying the elongated skulls of Peru and Bolivia for a number of years now, especially those on the coast of Peru in Paracas and Nazca, as well as those that have been found around Cusco and Tiwanaku and Pumapunku. And, of course, you know that conventional archaeologists believe that all of these were the result of artificial cranial deformation, but I believe that some of them, in fact, were born with elongated skulls. I was wondering what your opinion is on this subject.
I hear for the first time that they were born of it. I don't know if this is possible. It must then be a special mutation. But when they were born with an elongated head, so the brain, I mean, the mass of the brain is still not as big as the head. So what is inside the head? Just water. Is it then a water head? Would this child born with an elongated head not become stupid? So I really don't know. I know we have this phenomenon of these heads. You mentioned the places in Nazca. We have it in Paracas. We have it not only in South America. We have it in Egypt. We have it elsewhere. And my question was always, why have we done this? Why have our forefathers done this? Even if they did it artificially, why did they torture their children, their babies, to elongate their head? And my possible answer was always, they copied something. They copied the gods. They wanted to look like the gods or similar like the gods. But this is just one of the ideas. Many other ideas concerning these heads are around. I'm happy that you go into this team here.
Well, thank you very much. The thing is that I've done a global survey of where these have existed, and the three basic characteristics that the cultures speak of is because it was only done to the royal family. They, in general, say number one, they thought it was a beautiful characteristic. Number two, they thought it was a way to increase intelligence, and as you were saying, number three, they said this is what our ancestors looked like.
Yeah. Okay. I take all three possibilities. I consider all three possibilities. But for the first time I hear that some child are born with this head. That means some mutation or what?
Well, we're presently doing DNA testing on some of the skulls to find out whether or not they are all completely Homo sapiens like us, or whether they in fact have attributes from ancestors that may have been different from us.
If they are born with this longer-headed head, do you see any influence of extraterrestrial DNA?
Well, that's why we're conducting the DNA testing with the Peruvian government in order to see if there are differences. Okay. The Paracas, died off 2,000 years ago, so that's the time frame we're looking at.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for your call, Brien.
Thank you.
Robert Stephen Thomas, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Russell.
You've also been at the Paradigm Symposium in the past. Your question for Erich von Däniken.
Eric, I had an opportunity to meet you a year and a half ago in Minnesota. It was an honor.
Also, we'll meet again, I hope.
Yeah, it's Scotty's next convention this fall for certain. Also wanted you to know that I'm one of Amazon's top book reviewers, and if you look up the review list on Remnants of the Gods, you'll find that my review is number one. And also...
Oh, wonderful. You are the first one who told me this.
Yes, it was an excellent book. The photographs were brilliant. Eric, my question for you is this. There are many artifacts around the world that serve as direct evidence to indicate that Earth has, in fact, been visited by advanced beings at some point in early history. You've made a career of studying those. I know that you have explored places like Baalbek and the H blocks at Pumapunku, and you've studied the Book of Enoch, and many others. My question is, of all of the evidence that you have come across in your career, which one would you feel is the most important and establishes beyond a doubt that we have been visited by alien beings in the past on Earth?
Well, we have to differentiate between objects which are here and between some writings, old writings. Again, I have to repeat, we have not one extraterrestrial object, from extraterrestrial origin. All what we have, the humans made. So, the best case, optical case for me, is still the sarcophagus plate of Palenque in Mexico. There we have a tomb, but the tomb is covered with a stone. The stone is 3.8 meter long, 2 meter 20 large, and shows a fantastic design, chiseled in the stone. Now, according to archaeology, it was always said that the stone plate shows the Pakal. Pakal was the second last ruler of Palenque. And this is definitely true. It shows Pakal. But Pakal is shown in a way, so to be in the picture, he looks as if he was sitting on some kind of a bicycle, racing bicycle. He's bending forward. His hands are using some controls. His nose has something like a mask. He's sitting on a chair, and behind of him, outside the frame, you see something like a linking flame. Now, since this was found in 1962, in archaeology, we have 14 different explanations what it could be. One thing is sure, it is Pakal, but the newest explanation, coming from the scientific part, shows that Pakal is not entering into the earth. He's not falling into the mouth of a monster. He is going out from earth, out to the sky, out to space. This is the newest explanation of it. And optically, it's very, very fantastic to see it. And concerning the old writings, I still think the book of Enoch is absolutely brilliant. But the book of Enoch was translated some 160 years ago for the first time, and it was translated with the old eyes. So the book of Enoch is full of religious stuff, which definitely were not in the original writing. Somebody throughout the thousands of years has added religious materials, and we have never understood it. We were looking to the book of Enoch from a point of view of psychology. So out comes the religion. For example, when Enoch says he was brought up to heaven, religion says, okay, he was in real heaven. Then Enoch enters into a gigantic hall, and there is a chair or a throne, and the big majority is sitting there. Religious explanation says, now he is standing before the great God, which is not true in reality, because the so-called God stands up and gives greeting to Enoch. The real God, the omnipotent God, the God which we do not understand, would never stand up and say welcome to somebody who enters to his place. So we need new translations of the old text, and Enoch is one of the best of it.
Thank you.
Michael Tellinger, welcome to the program. Ask Erich von Däniken your question.
Thank you very much, Eric. Lovely to be talking to you, and just to tell you, you've been a great inspiration in my life, and actually I often say that it was probably you that started me off on my journey of discovery in 1978. So thank you for doing that to me. I've been very fortunate making some really interesting discoveries myself now in the last 7 or 8 years. And one of them has been to do with getting closer to understanding that the ancient civilizations had a very good understanding of the laws of nature and physics and science that we do not understand today. Do you have any interesting experiences or information to share with us that would sort of be in line with some of the measurements that we have made in the stone circles of South Africa that deal with frequencies and energies and electromagnetic waves? Have you had any experiences with that kind of scientific information from some of the ancient sites that you've explored?
No, not to my knowledge. I mentioned before in the show that all the real old ruins in Europe, including in Greece, which is in Europe, are under a geometrical pattern. So they are all on the same distances and the same angles. Now concerning South Africa, I really don't know, because I was just 2 or 3 times in South Africa as a tourist.
Some of the structures that you describe in your work are now becoming very obvious, similar kind of structures or structures of a similar nature that are consistent with giant machines, ancient machines that basically work on silicon-based technology using sound and light and vibrational frequency to actually activate them and turn the machines on and make them perform a variety of activities. This is now very obvious, specifically from the measurements and the research that I've done in South Africa. And I wonder if if you can cast your mind back to some of the spectacular places you've been to that you could possibly point out, and maybe now that you think about it, that it'll suddenly go, oh my goodness, I see what you mean. This is probably most likely an energy device because of this reason or that reason. Is there anything that comes to mind that you could maybe elaborate on in those lines?
No, but I'm very happy about your message. I am happy that some researcher is looking in this direction. Something new, maybe something which I missed all these 50 years in the past. I'm happy to hear it, but to my knowledge, I know nothing about this.
It's fair to say that, you're the pioneer, you're the patriarch of all of this stuff, and it begins something, and on the shoulders of giants, we take it into a new direction.
I would like to just add exactly to what Russell said. Eric, If it wasn't for you, there would be millions of people still in the dark and not questioning. And I do believe that you were really one of the early pioneers that really pushed people, and I'm one of them, millions of people into a direction of asking questions, not being prepared to settle for the answers that we've been given by the past. And what I loved about your work in the early days, when it was standing alone among very little out there, your work was so pioneering and so obvious that what I loved about your work, that you just looked at the obvious things and you pointed out the obvious things, and it was the obvious that was previously invisible that became very visible and very obvious for everyone to see.
Okay, thank you for all these compliments. In the meantime, I'm 79 years old, and of course I know much more than whatever I ever used before. I have absolutely no doubt. We have been visited by beings from outer space some thousands of years ago, and our forefathers have been influenced. I have written all my knowledge down in 35 books in the meantime.
Michael Tellinger, thank you so much for being on the program.
Thank you, Russell, and thank you very much, Eric. Lovely to be chatting to you.
Tell me about the challenges in putting the information out there and the obstacles that you've seen over the 45 years of you doing research. I mean, obviously things were much different back in the late 60s than they are now.
Well, I really learned that in the meantime, also I am still a controversial figure, but in the meantime I am accepted. I have here in Europe different speeches in some universities or high schools, or what I speak in open publics. So, for example, in city halls, it's always overcrowded. With overcrowded, I mean 1,000 or 1,200 persons. So it has changed. The situation has changed. When I published Chariots of the Gods, that was in 1968, I was crashed down more or less completely by the scientific community, including by the media. And because at that time I was not a professional writer, I was really not a professional researcher. All of this I learned much later. But in the meantime, I have a good renommé, a good reputation, including here in Switzerland. In Switzerland, we have, as you have in other countries, many newspapers. And the largest newspaper in Switzerland is called Blick, B-L-I-C-K. And every 2 weeks, I write a column for Blick. And this since 2.5 years. And it's very, very well accepted here.
Scotty Roberts, you still on the line?
I am here.
Do you have another question for Erich von Däniken?
I just want to ask you, and this is more from the viewpoint of probably people out there who would be looking at you and reading your work. What do you feel is some of the most concise evidence that you have found, or empirical evidence? Because it seems that when we talk about paleo contact or ancient aliens or ancient alien contact, that we have all these little bits of evidences that seem to mount up, but we don't have anything that's so solid that we can say, here it is. What would you qualify in your experience as some of the best evidence, or what do we need to see? What do you think will bring us that evidence?
That's really hard to know. As I said before, we have no extraterrestrial object. I have never found an extraterrestrial hammer or whatever. All what we have, the humans did it. It's the old questions why for the gods. Now, we have things on this planet which definitely our Stone Age people could never have made because they had not the tool, they had neither the knowledge. And some of these gigantic blocks worked with tools not from Stone Age are in Pumapunku. Pumapunku is in the highland of Bolivia. And I measured these stones some 45 years ago. And it's definitely not Stone Age tools who worked there. So who did it? By asking who did it, you still don't have a proof for extraterrestrials. Some suggest that we had a higher civilization some 10,000 of years ago. But this is completely controversial in archaeology as the extraterrestrials have. So it's still a process of learning. I'm definitely sure that extraterrestrials were here because I know too much about the old texts. in the meantime, I'm 79 years old, and I receive so much information from all over the world, and in most of the cases, these informations came from the scientific community. Some academics write me, please, Mr. Von Däniken, look at that. Could you publish it? Because I cannot publish it myself. As soon as I publish it in my scientific community, I am ridiculed. So I have good information. We were definitely visited by extraterrestrials, but we have not one scientific proof.
It seems to me that there are lots of scientists and academics out there who would subscribe to some of these theories and say that there's plenty of evidence to establish, if not a single bit of evidence, there's multiplicity of evidences that seem to establish a sort of, if you will, a scientific methodology. But they are afraid to come out and say anything for fear of what the repercussions will be in their fields.
That's exactly the case. As I said before, we have a German Sumerologist. His name is Professor Dr. Burkhardt, and he translated one old Sumerologian text, and he's now a professional. He cannot be attacked like they attacked Zachariah Sitchin. So he's a professional. And he made a translation of some part of a Sumerian text, and he says to me, and the book is here, this is absolutely sensational, and this is absolutely scientific. And the answer comes out is completely different of the answer which was translated 150 years ago. We have another knowledge now, and we come to other results.
Your new book, Remnants of the Gods, what's the best information that you've put forth in this new book?
Oh, God, there are so many things inside this book. I'm talking about mysteries in Europe, old Europe. In old Europe, we have a lot of ruins from Stone Age. For example, everyone knows Stonehenge in England. We have other ruins in French Brittany, etc. Now, I present in my book, Remnants of the Gods, that many of these old, really old, 5,600 years old holy places are linked, all the antique buildings in Greece. For example, Delphi, Epidaurus, Nemea, etc. They are all under a geometric pattern. Each ruin, it has the same distance, the same angles, etc. All this is very, very crazy and brings to the question, who measured some thousands of years ago in the time of Stonehenge, who measured our planet? And what for? What's the purpose of it? But definitely you can prove it is the way. And the second part in the book, Remnants of the Gods, deals with the Great Pyramid. But this you have to read. I have 200 pictures in the book. It's absolutely, thought-provoking. By the way, excuse me, I have to learn English again.
Erich von Däniken, thank you very much for being on the program, and thank you to our guest callers.
Thank you very much for giving me the chance to be with you.
Yeah, that would be a pleasure.
Thanks for
Again, thank you very much, Erich von Däniken, for being on the program.